to chaos and led to people assuming it was canceled. But Saber Interactive saw the potential and decided to take over the project completely. Then Saber's co-founder effectively bought Saber from the Embracer Group so they could be independent and promised to keep working on KOTOR themselves. So best case scenario, development is just paused and maybe somebody will pick up the last Ronin game later, or Black Forest will get more resources so they can finish the game. Either way, it's unfortunately time to move on from this game for now. It's tough to hear, but there is good news. If you're looking for another superhero game to root for, the creators of Batman Arkham Origins and Gotham Knights have a new DC game in development under the new leadership of James Gunn. Click the video on screen to learn more.
Rumors and things to get into. Thomas, what's going on?
There's a lot to get into, Josh. Well, first off, welcome back. Good to have you back. Off last week. Not a lot going on last week. Combine is here, and now there's a rumor for everything, and there's a rumor from everybody, and we can take all different sides on every single one of them. And so I think we go through each and every one. We'll read the comments, hang out for the next hour or so, have fun, and
I'm gonna have to see what happens. Because I might have to change my shit. We'll see.
We'll see what it looks like. Is built for rumors. You get all the GMs under one roof. They all start talking. They talk to this reporter and that reporter. They leak this. They leak that. Just because Diana Russini, I know we single her out a lot, but Diana Russini says something, or Adam Schefter says something, or this Eagle beat writer says something. It's true. It's false. It's for us to try to sift through all of the nonsense and figure out what we think is actually going to happen.
Yes, and that's the beauty, or for some people, I know that we hate it or that they hate it, but the beauty of the NFL Combine, like you said, you get all of, or the vast majority of the important people in the NFL under one roof, under one stadium, and conversations happen. Sometimes it's not even legitimate conversations, or in the sense of that it's actually going to happen, but it's just posturing, right? Because we understand that it's going to happen in about a week and a half. Free agency hits, and whether it's, we are going to
why does this shit keep turning on,
or,
bro?
You see all these reports of
I don't want it on.
Richardson is able to seek a trade.
Like, stop doing that shit.
Kayvon Thibodeau able to go seek
a
trade.
It keeps fucking up my shit,
there's something
bro.
You see out there that it's like,
I don't want that active.
Like Tremaine Edmonds, I believe, or Terrell Edmonds.
That shit get on my fucking nerves, bro.
It says like, will you go seek a trade? Well, it's because he's going to get cut if they can't find anybody. So, it's just like all these things that come out. But, if with it being the off season, I guess it does give us something to talk about, speculate about, rumors. And I understand. I hear people in the chats, and we both get them, of comments like, it's just speculation, hypotheticals, rumors. That's what it is. That's what everybody's playing through the roster building session of the NFL season. So, yes. Shout out to everybody else, though, in the chat. As always, appreciate you guys. Drop a like for us. Make sure you're subscribed. Crazy giveaways nonstop throughout the year and the off season. It is the off season, but again, usually try to have as much news, recaps, keeping everybody up to date on what's going on. I don't know where we necessarily want to start. Tanner McKee was thrown out here by Zay Music as no more worth than a 6th round pick. That's interesting. It feels like a little more than that, but he is on the thumb. I don't know if we want to start with Tanner McKee and go from there.
Well, let's just address that he's definitely worth more than a 6. Tanner McKee's biggest problem is that he did play in a game this past year and did not look as good as he did in the 1.5 games he played at the end of 2024. He was really good in relief of Kenny Pickett versus the Dallas Cowboys, and fantastic in Week 18 when they pretty much lit up the Giants' defense. Again, it was backups, but still, he was not as good this past season. It's tanked him a little bit. Had he not played at all this year, Josh, I think the Tanner McKee aura would have really started to rumble right now. But the big factor is that this is
they can't expect like that nigga to play one game.
In recent memory. I mean, the draft is full of Fernando Mendoza, who the Raiders are obviously going to take, and then a bunch of guys you kind of go, do you like Carson Beck? Do you think Drew Aller can recover from his injury?
Bro, Carson Beck is going to be terrible. No, let me not say that.
But still, and the answer is no. Free agent-wise, what free agent quarterback do you
want? Carson Beck going to be ass.
$30 million because they're desperate. Now, yeah, I think Blake Willis is like a guaranteed superstar. I think he earned that money. Very performances with the Packers when Jordan Love was injured. But they're going to overpay because there's not a lot out there. If this was one of those, Josh Allen drafts where there's like 5 really good quarterbacks that are all going to go in the first round, we wouldn't even talk about Tanner McKee. Because there's going to be one for sure in the first round. And I seen Ty Simpson mocked kind of where Kenny Pickett was a couple of years ago. 20, Jackson Dart area. They're going to talk about Tanner McKee. And if you're doing the Jets, that was the Tony Pauline report both of us talked about on our shows the past 2 days. they might look for a cheaper veteran quarterback option who is a lot more of a high ceiling, low risk, high reward type player. Make a trade, bring him in. If he turns out to be great, great. But he gave up a 4th-round draft pick for Tanner McKee, a 3rd-round draft pick for Tanner McKee. It didn't work out. You know, quarterbacks that don't work out are a dime a dozen. I think Philadelphia will shop him, and I think that they probably should.
Yeah, I agree. Right there with you, especially, I saw that report whenever it first came out mentioning about Malik Willis and the $30 million, and I was like, really 30? Yes, he looked good, but we're talking about $30 million for Malik Willis? And if that's the case,
bruh, what?
And Anthony Richardson,
Bruh, there's no fucking way. Malik Willis, 30 million, bruh, nigga, get the fuck out my face. Bruh, this nigga keep fucking nana, bruh. Come on, bruh.
If you're the Jets,
like, I don't get no fucking time. Like, this shit is goofy.
Even Daniel Jeremiah.
This nigga doing this cheesy ass blitz shit, bruh.
To the Jets, so
like, come on, bro.
I don't know. It's 2 reporters. It's 2 analysts, guys that cover the
nigga
draft,
doing this fucking cheesy ass shit, bro.
In the know. So for them to be saying it, I don't know. If you're the Jets, you look at it. Well, okay, they don't want to spend big money. According to the multiple reports, there is that Darren Muji, the Jets GM, does not want to spend.
This nigga doing this cheesy ass shit, bro. Alright, this shit weak as fuck, bro.
A lesser quarterback, so that crosses off Malik Willis because they're not going to pay $30 million for him. Anthony Richardson, okay,
nigga doing this cheesy ass fucking shit.
That feels like a Minnesota Vikings all day, every day.
Yeah.
Just because of the comments that Kevin O'Connell's made after the what did he went up to Anthony Richardson. Was he the one who he shared keep your head up or something? I think he was.
Mm-hmm.
So, he's not hid anything about the fact that he likes his play style, or at least potential to be able to do that. Feels like you could do it there, but you have to give up a decent amount. So again, I don't think the Jets would, and that's why it does make a lot of sense for a Tanner McKee. I know there's Davis Mills.
All I do is verse cheesy ass niggas, bro. I can't get a nigga that's gonna play fucking regular, bro. Niggas always want to abuse the fucking metas and shit, bro.
Take your pick between
I don't get it.
Or him. It's a risk either way for us.
God,
I would be okay with it. If it's a 2nd-round pick, sure, absolutely sign me up.
It's hot than a motherfucker out this one.
For sure, automatic. 3rd-round pick. The Jets don't have one this year.
Let me turn it.
If it's a 3rd round next year, I know the way the math usually works is that equates to 1 round back, so it's like a 4th round pick almost because you're doing next year's 3rd.
That shit got
But
down.
even for that, I'd say, you know what, fine. I think Howie's proven, at least to me, I'd be like, Howie's proven that he can go and find somebody else. Yes, Tanner McKee is great to have as a backup. We understand the importance, maybe more than any organization, of the backup quarterback. But if you're able to get that type of draft capital and what we've seen Howie do, I'm okay with it, especially because this is a little bit of a weaker draft holistically. There's some positions that are good, but I would take for next year's draft.
Well, and you got to remember that Philadelphia only has so much more time left contractually with Tanner McKee. I know he's very cheap right now. You don't have to get rid of him. But if you want to maximize the value of Tanner McKee, you will have to trade him eventually. Because if you're Tanner McKee, all he needs is a chance to start. And he doesn't have a chance to start in Philadelphia because of Jalen Hurts. And so he will walk when his contract is inevitably up in, a year, 2 years from now. They're not going to be able to re-sign him because somebody else will pay him money. And so you might as well get something for him. That way, you don't twiddle your thumbs and he sits on the bench for another 18 games and then he just pieces out for absolutely nothing. So it's not a big deal either way. If they keep him, we'll say great. They have their Nick Foles back up in case the worst were to happen. Who knows if he can actually play at that level? We'll maybe eventually find out. Hopefully not. Or they trade him. Some people will say that's ridiculous, but you could go spend a 4th-round draft pick on a quarterback, a 5th-round draft pick on a quarterback. Go get some free agents. Go trade for somebody. I always made a lot of quarterback trades.
This nigga runs into the block.
Past couple of years, he got rid of Kenny Pickett. He brought in DTR.
That nigga runs into the block.
I mean, gee whiz, they did a ton of different moves at backup quarterbacks. So to me, it's not a big deal. I think the bigger deals right now are what's happening with the key free agents internally and where we're starting to kind of hear the rumors of who's staying and who's going. And that pivots well to where we're at with Dallas Goedert, Nakobe Dean, and Jalen Phillips. Those right now are your big 3, Josh. And it feels like, I said on my show today, the rumblings out of the combine, which we started the live show by saying you can't believe everything that you hear. If you were to believe the overall majority rumblings out of the combine, it would be keeping Jalen Phillips. Nakobe Dean has a 0% chance of coming back. Not a surprise.
Yeah, Nakobe Dean's not coming
Dallas
back.
Goedert is also gone as well. That would be my guess right now if I had to bet based on the reports we're hearing on the NFL Combine.
Yeah, I can certainly see that. I know that we're hoping for as many guys as returning as possible, obviously, but it's like, yeah, you look at those. Kyle Pitts getting the franchise tag of $15 million per year. That I didn't like seeing that.
Kyle Pitts got fucking tagged.
That's where it's going to end. Surely, the Falcons figure something out and do more of a long-term deal because $15 million for one season is a lot, and a cap hit there. I mean, obviously the Eagles,
bro, Kyle Pitts, no,
like nor do they use the franchise tag to begin
with.
Damn. But I mean, just seeing it, I'm like, Dallas Goedert probably will.
Bro, we could have had Kyle Pitts, nigga.
I know that the Eagles did restructure right before the end of the season with Dallas's contract, so the void years are not all of a dead cap hit in just one season. So either way, they have a little bit more flexibility. And it looked like initially it's like, okay, they set that up perfectly. They could make a deal. They could extend him, and he could come back, which they're going to try to do that. As Howie Roseman said, like 2 days ago when he was talking to reporters, he's like, yeah, we're going to sit down with his agent and see to get or try to get something done. But yeah, I'm leaning towards that being the case. And like if it's Jalen Phillips, because I've seen a lot of people say this too, reporters that are in the know of talking about, like, it feels like the Eagles are trying to maneuver or do whatever they can to retain Jalen Phillips, and then everything else.
Jalen Phillips.
Player to come back would be gravy. It's like if you could get Jalen Phillips, that may be it. It may be Jalen Phillips and all the other free agents we talked about.
Jalen Phillips,
Reed Blankenship, Dallas Goedert, Nakobe Dean, just gone. But if you get one more of those back,
is Jalen Phillips that?
We're feeling pretty good.
I don't know.
But it does seem like Jalen Phillips would be the number one target, especially because, I mean, you look at this free agency class or the groupings there. There's not a lot. I mean, there's a couple, but they're like the top tier that Howie's not going to pay that much forward, right? You got like a Trey Hendrickson, but you're not going to pay that much. So if you look at the realistic guys that he's going after, it's either you bring back Jalen Phillips because he works, otherwise you're taking a gamble on some guys, or you go through the draft, but they only have 3 guys on the roster right now anyway. I mentioned in the show yesterday, Nolan Smith, Jalix Hunt, and Jose Ramirez. And I got a lot of comments going, who the heck is Jose Ramirez? I'm like, exactly. Like,
I don't know who the fuck Jose Ramirez is. I seen that shit.
Whether or not you want to classify,
I don't know who the fuck Jose Ramirez is.
He's probably going to eventually get that deal done.
I don't know who the fuck that nigga is, bro.
So I'm with you. I feel like JP. Mauricio, by the way, appreciate the 2 for the super chat, says, is it possible to sign Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb? If it was an or on that question, I think so. But
well, if Bradley Chubb wanted to take the biggest discount of his entire career, then sure, but he's not going to, right? He'll take money somewhere else. I said on my show, was it yesterday, the day before, this is setting up for a repeat of the 2024 offseason, right? Philadelphia enters free agency about a week before. They extend Zach Bond. They rework the Saquon Barkley deal, and they make sure Lane Johnson's money gets moved around a little bit to save a little bit of dead cap money to spend more in free agency. They had 3 big internal re-signings, with Bond really being viewed as an external signing because he was a 1-year rental because they signed him on a 1-year deal. He popped off. He could have gotten more money elsewhere, and he decided to go ahead and stay in Philadelphia with a still very heavy contract, but not what he could have gotten at one of these lesser teams with big cap money. So I expect basically the exact same thing. Bond is going to be, or Jalen Phillips will be Zach Bond this year. Then you have Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis are going to be obviously more expensive, but in the same essence as Saquon Barkley and Lane Johnson, right? 2 of these internal guys they want to lock up long term. We know that Jalen Carter is going to get $100+ million. We know Jordan Davis will be cheaper, but still north of 12, 15, 20. I've seen those numbers kind of flop around at 17. Those are the big 3 that they're going to have hopefully done in the coming weeks here, because March 11th is where things kick off, and you do not want to have a scenario where Jalen Phillips, if they like him that much, I think that they do, hits free agency and sees the kind of money that could be thrown around by other football teams that have $100 million in cap space. Then it'll be exactly as it was last year, where they're going to go bargain hunting, and they're going to throw a lot of mud on the wall and see what sticks. And last year, Josh Uche, and you're like, okay, he was good a couple years ago. What does he do? Azeez Ojulari, okay, good a couple years ago. What does he do? Adoree Jackson, 3 of the biggest names that they signed. 1 worked. Like, Uche kind of worked there in the beginning, and then he couldn't even get on the active roster towards the end because they obviously had Jalen Phillips, and it proved that Uche was not going to be anything close to that. And I think they're going to do the exact same thing. And we're going to sit here on our shows and go, okay, this guy was really good this season. He was not really good this season, but he's very cheap on a 1-year deal, and he plugs a hole of need, wait till the draft does, and go from there. I think they could bring back Adoree Jackson. I think that they will look at Adoree Jackson and go, Are you sure you can get a lot more money
Your nose
you
sound
fit
crazy.
the Fangio system. You played pretty well at the end for the Fangio system. We can still draft your replacement and have him wait in the wings, and maybe he takes over, maybe he doesn't. But I could see a Dory being one of these internal guys.
This nigga is so lame, bro.
Oh yeah, we should keep a Dory Jackson on a 1-year super cheap deal because we're not going to go out and get a big name cornerback unless they want to spend money for Denzel Ward. I just don't think
this nigga is so lame, bro.
I think the 2024 offseason is going to be an exact duplicate, or 2025 offseason, or whatever. It'll be an exact duplication of what's going to happen here in 2026. We need to be ready for it.
Really? I'm like, we can't tackle niggas, bro.
Cheap 1-year contracts because they really only hit on one.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I hope that they can.
It's hard
with you. It is, yeah. But I'm with you as far as like how he's going to take some swings at these lower salary guys. You know, he's going to have some guys that we pay a lot, and you look at that middle class, so to speak. There was only like 2 players. I think Zach Berman had an article about it of like players making from $7 to $15 million per year, and it's kind of the reasons. Like, okay, you have a bunch of star players, and then you have a bunch of like vet minimums, really low guys taking risk or chances on guys who are trying to prove themselves, something like that, and then a couple of those middle tier, but hardly anything. So it makes it a whole lot more difficult. I am hopeful that they can get something done. Really, I think it comes down to Jordan Davis and getting that extension, because we've talked about this before, but if they could get an extension done, they can free up another like $9 million in cap space. And so if you could do that, the Michael Carter cut seems like a foregone conclusion at some point. We'll hear about that because that's another $9 million or a little bit more than that.
Yep.
That's, together between just those 2 moves, it's $18 million or so. And then you're looking and going, okay, that's about almost 40. Like you're close to 40 based on moves that Howie can make to free up cap space. And that's enough to, get some business done. But before then, if it's JD, he's got the 5th-year option, so it's not like he's a free agent yet. But I wonder if his agent is even going like, because I would imagine there's been some conversations, but I'm just wondering if his agent's like, yeah, we're not even gonna really like explore anything yet, and let's just see what a defensive tackle makes in this free agency class. Let's see what an offer comes to, right? Because then if he can get a better idea of, oh, okay, so yeah, you got a guy that's making X amount of dollars. Well, then let's see what you can offer me here, because projections have been initial projections for like $17.5 million a year for Jordan Davis, and I think if that's the actual cost of doing business, everyone signs up for it in a heartbeat because of what we saw and his progression. But that remains to be seen. And again, all the guys there deserve to get a bag. I want them to do that for the best case scenario for them, for their families. It makes sense. At the same time, though, it does make you appreciate a lot of times the guys who are willing to take, even if it's just a couple million, a couple
this nigga
million
Riley
off
Moss
because
is
of a
getting
team-friendly discount. Jalen Phillips, will he be willing to do that? That question there. Him and his fiance are pregnant with a boy, soon to be. I saw that post. So,
yes.
Like if they loved Philly, if they loved the area, maybe it's enough to go, yeah, we don't want to try to move too much. Although I think that picture was maybe somewhere in Florida, if I'm not mistaken. So
I think it was too.
Somewhere else. But we can hope, we can dream. Darth Panda, member for 9 months. If Malik is worth 30, then McKee could pull a second. I think so. If Malik pulls, I think it's 30 million.
I think if a team was desperate enough, right? Like let's say you're the Jets. You're not going to spend your first round draft pick on a quarterback because there's not going to be one. And then the second round comes around and the guy you like isn't there, right? Maybe somebody reached for Carson Beck and Carson Beck was your guy. Maybe on day 2 or 3, you pick up the phone and make an offer for, as you mentioned, a 2027 third round draft pick for Tanner McKee. And now, do they do it earlier the way Philadelphia gets to 2026? Yes, but I think that if someone is desperate enough, then they could offer, a third. Second seems very high, but it is a quarterback, and it's a quarterback that has, a lot of momentum behind him. I think we have to wait and see. I don't know if a 5th really excites Howie Roseman, right? He hasn't hit on a lot of 5th-round draft picks recently. Think back to, even try to think of who was last year's 5th-round draft pick. Was it the Manila Gorilla? Like they have not. Excuse me. Hit on a lot of 5th-round draft picks recently.
Smile London was one of the 5th. We had
probably one of the 5ths too. Here, I'm looking it up right now because I don't think we've hit. It was Smile Monday. Well, they had a bunch of 5ths. They had Mac McWilliams, Smile Monday, and Drew Kendall last year. None of which we can really grade yet because it's still early. Then it was Trotter, Anaya Smith, and Trevor Keegan. Keegan's not on the roster. Anaya Smith's not on the roster. He might be practice squad. And Jeremiah Trotter I think is probably the best of the
Anaya
three by
Smith
far.
ain't.
They didn't have a fifth in 2023. Tanner McKee was their 6th-round draft pick. Didn't have a fifth in 2022. Kyron Johnson was your 6th-round draft pick. And they had 1 fifth in 2021. That was Kenny Gainwell. So, you know, haven't hit a lot. John Hightower was the other 5th in 2020. So he's not hit a lot of 5th-round draft picks. I don't think a 5th-round draft pick gets him that excited. I think anywhere from a 4th up would make him.
Like, I don't know if my defense going. Yeah, I don't know if my offense is blocking niggas, bro.
You're still getting a benefit in almost like a surplus of sorts because of where you drafted him to begin with. So it's still a win. I get it.
Why the fuck is it so
for the
hot
second
in
round
this
pick
bitch,
option?
though?
Even if it like was a
what the fuck?
You do a second round swap or a second round pick swap for like a 4th or a 5th. You know, I don't know exactly the math of how that equates to it, but depending on where their selection is, we potentially could get it for this year if it's
like,
throwing in a player and a pick.
I'm burning the fuck
to
up.
Get up into the second round. But again, it'd be if Howie likes the position or there's a player available that he wants to trade up and go get. It's like, hey, Jets, you know, we're willing to throw a little bit more in here. We can give Tanner and a pick to move up to that spot. But it gives you options nonetheless. But yeah, I'm with you. Like if you still get a little bit of extra on that with a pick, it's probably worth it because you got so many selections, and we're going to see Howie be very active with trades regardless. Lunar Wolf with a 5, we appreciate that. Says, who are you wanting from the draft? I would love to pick. Would love to pick up Caden. Is it Wetchen? From Iowa, good return guy and could be good wide receiver 3.
I feel like I'm not quite ready for anyone out of day one, right? I've been focusing on day one draft picks because that's what we're interested in. You know, who are you going to take there at 23? I've not gotten into the later run draft picks as well. I've heard about the Iowa receiver. They're going to take a receiver at some point. They keep tying us to the Indiana receiver. Is it Cooper? Is his last name? I don't think he's a first rounder either. But we've been mocked to him.
Are you talking about?
If they trade AJ Brown, then you know obviously they're going to go heavy on receiver early on. I'll probably take 2 in that draft. But I need to take a receiver regardless at some point. First round for me, I was pulling up the list here that I've been making. I know Caden Proctor is getting a lot of love out of Alabama. Do you want to take Lane Johnson's replacement now? I think people would say yes. I think there's a lot of reports saying how he wants to take offensive lineman in round 1. If he's there, I think he makes a lot of sense. I thought it was interesting today, Josh. At the combine, every reporter asked every single player, have you met with the Eagles yet? And then they make a list of like who the Eagles have met with. They've not met with Kenyon Sadiq. They met with like 4 other tight ends.
Yeah.
They have not met with the Oregon guy who we all love, who would be amazing. I think it's because he's not going to be there, and how he's not going to trade up in round 1 to get anybody but someone on the trenches or, you know, an edge rusher that they really, really like. You can make the argument that Jahad Campbell was an edge rusher, even though he's a linebacker, but he did try and trade up for him and obviously was able to stay put. I don't think Sadiq's going to be a possibility. I don't think he slips past 15. Every single team in the top 15 likely needs a tight end. They think this guy is a generational talent. I think there are other really good tight ends later on in the draft Philadelphia you can go ahead and grab. The edge rusher I like. I'm interested in Danny Dennis Sutton out of Penn State. I don't know if he's going to be there for Philadelphia early on in that draft. And then the safety. They talked about him, I think, today. He mentioned his meeting with Philadelphia. Emmanuel McNeil-Warren from Toledo. You get another Toledo guy. There's a little bit of a connection there. Love the size. I love everything about him. You just wonder, can the Toledo really produce 2 elite all-pro, secondary players? Maybe they can. Maybe, reunite him with the fellow Toledo, and Quinyon Mitchell. But to me, it all depends on what happens in free agency. Like if they need a safety, this is a very heavy safety draft. Maybe you get somebody in round 1. But my guess is going to be probably an offensive lineman unless they lose Jalen Phillips. Then they could go pass rusher, right? It's hard to know. But I'm starting to kind of think that Sadiq is going to be out of the picture, and it feels like Philadelphia is trying to tell us that by meeting with a lot of other tight ends not named Kenyon Sadiq.
I've still been looking
There's a couple different guys. I'm with you as far as just looking at some of these prospects and most likely being in or just in like day 1 for selections there. But
yeah.
The Crows.
They obviously still have a ton of time. We said we do combine visits. They're going to bring in a certain amount of guys. That doesn't necessarily mean
also good
people
point
that are does that mean that it's off? It's absolutely not off the list, but.
I don't know how this
last
nigga
year
is
was
getting burned,
this is a little bit different, but still like top 30 visits. Normally Howie drafts off of the top 30 visits, and it was the first draft in forever.
That's right.
There was not a single player that he took that was on the top 30 visit. So we'll keep an eye out on that because it does usually matter. It doesn't always because it got broken, that theory for last year. But yeah, like as Darth Panda says for the two on the super chat there, appreciate that. Says Sadiq is going to be a top 30 visit. He very well could be. He could be.
I'm sure
as a top 30. But like you said, are they going to actually make that trade so far, or to trade up and get him? Probably is what it would require. So I don't see that happening. If you look at some
we got
tight ends,
23.
as you mentioned, that they have brought in for visits so far, at least formal meetings at the combine, those are guys that are in their wheelhouse, and a lot of those are in the it's kind of ebb and flow right now because we haven't seen the testing exactly, so that'll give a little bit more solidified results for where they're projected. But it's anywhere from like day 2, day 3 selections for the vast majority of the tight ends that they've met with, and so. Howie has a lot of picks. We understand there's lots of potential selections there. So do you take your tight end there? You go with the trenches. I feel like the same way. They get an offensive lineman most likely in the first round unless someone just falls in their lap and they say, you know what, we absolutely have to take this. Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, I love the tape so far. But yes, the question continues to be, like you brought up there, like it's Toledo. We've seen it work. Because of Quinyon Mitchell, and there were some people like, yeah, but he looks good, but he's with Toledo, and then you started hearing some of even Nick Saban, I think, was bringing it up, right? Of like, Bama, we wanted him to be at Bama, but it wasn't going to happen. So there's some guys who don't have to play at the big schools, at the Power Fives like that, but
we back to the heat now.
It's a question. I think.
We back to the heat.
And then, as in a group chat with Q, he's been kind of trying to help him with the whole draft process, meeting with the Eagles, all that. That's cool. I love that. There's lots of connections, of course, with Toledo and Nick Sirianni's past relationships with some of those. So I'm not writing it off, but I think that it's like, where does he ultimately end up testing is going to be a big part of it too, because he shows a lot of physicality. He's a great tackler, plays in the box a ton. Some a little bit as free safety. So you do have that versatility. There have been a few that compared him. Daniel Jeremiah said he reminds him of a Derwin James.
Damn, it's hot as hell,
like,
bro.
Cool, great, sounds good. Again, there's so many like player comparisons too. I'm always like cautious to go, okay, is that going to be that guy, right? So it's the whole.
I can't get the fucking ball out,
so
my
far,
nigga.
Though,
like,
keep an eye on his 40 time, because if he puts up a decent 40 time, they're like, okay, you know what, maybe so. Could get interested here with that.
Shit is goofy.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Bro.
I mean, we forget. That is what got Quinyon Mitchell really the higher up first round grade. Most people had him as a top 3 cornerback in this draft. He went from a top 3 cornerback to cornerback 1 when he ran like a 4. What was it? 3.3? Was it a 4.44? It was crazy fast. It was the fastest Eagle ever at the NFL Combine that they drafted in round 1. Was it 4.33 or 4.43?
Let's see.
He was lightning quick.
Lightning fast. Did he get? He didn't get into the 4.2s, did he? He was close.
No, I thought it was 3.3.
Okay, yeah, ran official 4.33. Okay.
Yep. Which is nuts for a cornerback. He's for as long as he is, right?
That was a small
guy either.
He said that he said he could get into 4.2. He said that he ran slow. So I was like, I knew he said something about that. But yeah, 4.33.
But he also had like a 10.3 broad jump. He had a really high jump. He had the most bench press reps. He had 20 reps at 225 for a cornerback of any cornerback in that draft. He tested out of the wazoo. The same went for Nolan Smith. Nolan Smith was not a first-round edge rusher until he ran that, what was it, a 4.5 or whatever it was? I mean, he was blazing
4.3,
fast. And he squeaked.
7?
Yeah, it was even faster than that, right? It was nuts. And so how people test is going to dramatically change where they are mocked. They're starting to test right now. I think a couple of the edge rushers have been going, right? Haven't they've been going tonight or something like that? Today, this afternoon, I think it was defensive linemen. Yeah, they start testing, and when you get big boys running fast, people go nuts at the NFL Combine. So, with all that being said, is Toledo about to become DBU? If they get another DB picked in the first round, maybe, but we'll see how he tests. We'll see what happens. It's for the fun part of the NFL Combine.
It is. I think Maxon, what was the last name? Maxon Holt, I think, was the other safety that had played with Quinyon from Toledo. Now, he didn't get drafted, but he was brought in by the Eagles.
He was brought in by the Eagles, yes.
To see if that may be a potential fit. 4.39 for Nolan. I knew it was in the 4.3.
Gee whiz.
Damn, 4.39.
That side by side. It's the best thing ever when they do the side by side comparison. Here was so and so, like 10 years earlier, and I loved it because they put Nolan and they put Saquon, and it was like, you got to be kidding me. Nolan ran faster than Saquon did, but it does.
And then you stand next to Saquon Barkley and you meet Nolan Smith like you and I both do, and you go, how is Nolan Smith faster than Saquon Barkley? Like, that is crazy to think about. But story for
they're nuts. But it helped certain guys, right? Like, because Nick Emenwari, I'm thinking about.
I love
stud, and he was just like, okay, there's so many things, but especially once he tested, you're like, forget about it, right? Like, you're just like, this dude's like a linebacker. He moves like a
so
safety,
good.
and he's so versatile. But then he's got speed, even like a corner. DK Metcalf was kind of the same way. It's like, he was, but he tested like crazy. So then he gets drafted higher. So there's a select few guys, but yes, the ones that test like that. What's the dude's name from today that went for the Gators? Caleb. What's his last name? People are gonna mention it here in the comments in a second. I can't remember his last name now. For the Gators, he was like a ridiculous testing on measurements and everything today so far. They didn't run yet, but it was just based on like arm length, wingspan.
We can't get a fucking pass interference, my nigga.
I'll
like
here in a second too. So if nobody has,
wow.
I thought that you were gonna mention Sonny Styles. I mean, he tested it.
He tested insane. Yeah,
vertical for anyone 6'4" plus since 2003, and the highest vertical since 2003 for anybody 240 pounds plus. The outside linebacker from Ohio State was nuts at the NFL Combine, and then I think he ran a 4.49. It was Banks, yeah, and I think his Styles ran a 4.49. So
yeah.
All these defenders, they're getting bigger and stronger and faster every single year, and I'm telling you, it's the reason why people were looking at Jahad Campbell. Now, he obviously wasn't testing at the NFL Combine, or didn't test crazy well because he's coming off the injuries. But I think if he would have been healthy, Jahad Campbell would have gone a lot higher than 31 because he would have tested out the wazoo because he's a freak. We've walked past him at the Overcare Complex, and he is like 50 times bigger than Nakobe Dean. And Nakobe Dean is stocky and strong and fantastic, but you meet Nakobe Dean, and then we walked right past Jahad Campbell, and it's like, holy cow, that guy is big. He is thick, physical looking, and there's a reason why Nakobe Dean is probably going to go elsewhere. One, the main reason is Nakobe Dean's going to get a bag from somebody. The Cowboys are probably going to be interested. I don't think I can afford him, though. I think the Raiders make a ton of sense. One of our assistant coaches, and now in the Raiders defensive coaching staff, connection there. They got a lot of money. And Dean is going to be gone, but the other reason is because they think Jahad Campbell's a freak.
Yeah. And he's got to see
Jahad Campbell going to be that nigga, bro.
Selection for a reason. So it makes sense. I just hope it's not Dallas, but it does feel like it's trading towards
I am worried about Reed Blankenship. I'm worried about Reed Blankenship.
I can see that.
My mom is the biggest Reed Blankenship fan. She loves the Exciting Mike's podcast. She loves DeJean and Reed, and she told me, whenever you hear about Reed,
Reed Blankenship not coming.
Immediately text me. I was like, Mom, I don't know. I don't know if we're going to re-sign him. And I have a feeling that if you're Christian Parker and you're trying to rebuild a Cowboy defense as quickly as possible, you go get the guys get the job done. And Reed would be one of those guys where if Dallas was, not cheap enough, because the problem is Jerry's cheap, if they could dangle $3, $4, $5 more million in front of Reed Blankenship than what he's gotten or he's going to get in Philadelphia, it's a tough sell. That's a tough sell for a guy like Reed who's never really gotten that money. The same goes for Nakobe Dean. When you've never gotten that bag, right? Jalen Phillips has gotten the bag. Jalen Phillips got a contract extension with the Miami Dolphins, right? It's different. Now, obviously, you want to maximize money. You don't want to tell people to take less money. But when you've actually gotten that first big contract, it's it's easier to kind of take a little bit less. But if you're Nakobe Dean, you're one injury away from your career being over. You can't take $5 million less a year. You just can't. And the same could probably be said for Reed, who's also had a lot of concussions.
Yeah, I wouldn't knock him one bit for the reasons that you're talking about. Yeah,
I wouldn't either. I wouldn't either. It would just
whatever
stink because it's Dallas.
But yeah, if it's Dallas, of all teams, I really don't want that to happen. But
that'd be fun. That'd be fun.
Reed feels like there's a maybe, there's a possibility. Like Nakobe, it just feels so far out there of a pipe dream for him to return because of what he's going to get and also the surplus of linebackers that the Eagles have. Whereas Reed is one of those of, what does the market see him as? Because he's had moments where he's looked good, and then you also go back and look and see, like, there's several instances of his coverage that was not good at all. And so, you know, someone go, well, he's undrafted, and he showed something one year, but then this past year a little bit up and down and inconsistent. Was that more of scheme wise?
When we get fucking what's his name,
inexperienced
all
safety
that
for
shit
Andrew
done.
Cooper, not really having a surefire CB2.
When we get somebody faster, bro, because this shit is fucking ridiculous.
Whatever it was, there was some inconsistency there, and maybe the league views that and says, you know, we're not going to offer him necessarily as much as what Philly is expecting, or a lot of teams are thinking, and then maybe Reed could come back. But his seems like there's at least a percentage out there. It may be a small percentage, but for him to come back, whereas, yeah, I think Nakobe, you know, as sad as it is, I think it's kind of a foregone conclusion. So
it is
just not Dallas. Just don't go to Dallas.
Just don't go to Dallas.
I'll be okay if it's not Dallas.
I totally agree.
Caleb Banks, by the
way. If Nakobe Dean goes to Dallas, I'm gonna kill myself.
I was talked about the interior defensive line for Florida.
Yes.
Yeah, almost a perfect 10 on the relative athletic score. So not too bad. Not too bad of a performance. He tested over 90th percentile in 4 of the 7 combine categories: height, weight, broad jump, arm length, and vertical jump. Actually, and
that sounds pretty good.
Right about there. So
that sounds pretty good. Yeah,
yeah. For a guy who's 6'6", 335 pounds. I mean,
it's pretty good.
Not too shabby to have those.
Pretty good.
It's you know, the crazy thing though, and I think somebody posted this earlier today, was that so he's that big of an individual, which is actually a little bit smaller, a tiny bit smaller than Jordan Davis was when he showed up at the combine.
Yeah.
But so Caleb ran a 5:05 40-yard dash time, and that equates to what would be in the relative athletic score a good grade. But Jordan Davis was elite because he ran, what was it? Well, official. It was like the 4.8 somewhere?
I thought he got under 4.9. I think, I mean, it was a 4 something, and I don't think it was a 4.7, but I thought it was a 4.
Bro, why the fuck is it so high?
It was. Oh my gosh. Okay, see, I remember that 4.8 for some reason. It was 4.7.
It was so much bigger back then.
4.78.
He was a
4.78 is kind of crazy.
Past season, he really slimmed down, and he was running that fast. Imagine what he could run right now.
See, absolutely, yeah, it would be.
But that nigga could probably run a 4.6.
That JD was faster than
4.5, some shit.
At training camp, remember, it was kind of him talking about, oh, JD slipped up and stuff, and they do the box drills and whatnot. They're like, oh no, JD beats me. JD's faster. So, I say just go ahead. You know, make the extension, get it done.
Yeah, I would too. I would too.
He's getting in a little work. I at least like to see the rehab, you know, for the shoulders. I don't know if that means actual surgery that he will do, or if he's trying to avoid it altogether. I didn't see any other follow-up report to that, but at least he's doing something to kind of proactively get his shoulders right before next year.
Yeah, I talked about it on my show today, right? He posted his first since the end of the season Instagram video of him working out. It was a full shoulder workout, by the way. It was a full body. He was doing all sorts of shoulder stuff there. To me, this is more of a marketing ploy to kind of show everybody, like, hey, I'm okay. Give me my $100 million 4-year extension. I'm ready to roll, because he kind of needs to get this past season out of everybody's mind. And we know it was all because of injury, but when you started with spitting on Dak Prescott and you ended banged up. I mean, he missed a lot of games. He missed training camp, and he was never his true self. I think a lot of Eagle fans, not correctly, are saying that, you know, maybe he's not the guy we thought he was, but he is kind of running out of time, right? And I say that very, very hesitantly because I know he still has time. But Jalen Carter by year 3 was supposed to be like the best defensive tackle in the National Football League. Was he going to be that this year? Pre-injury? We don't know. But he does need to, I think, elevate back to the level that we see at times. The Buffalo Bill game was fantastic, and then a couple of games prior, he was non-existent. It's like we need him to get back to being the most dominant player in the football team. The game record that Fletcher Cox was during the prime of his career, we forget that Fletcher had to be doubled every single snap. And Jalen Carter, especially in the end of 2024, was that way. Especially in the playoffs, you had to double Jalen Carter. This past season, you could get away with it because he had to take plays off because his shoulders hurt so darn bad. And so my hope is the shoulders get right, he gets the extension, the motivation is there, and 2026 becomes the year of Jalen Carter where he completely takes over the league and is the best defensive tackle in the NFL. Because he can be that. He 100% can.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, he absolutely can. We've seen it was infuriating last year, like you say, just to know what he could be, and then the injury.
Yeah.
But then the question is like, okay, we knew about this, and he knew about this for the entire offseason. So, like our question was like, why wasn't it addressed? Was it like,
I know,
oh, well, you could get surgery, but maybe there's an alternative route. And I'm all for, like, don't go under the knife, right? Like, I get that.
Sure.
But, like, at some point, where was the fine line? Because it felt like they should have known this before the regular season started. The way that he played, as poorly as he played, I mean, heck, Zach Berman's article about it, I don't know, felt like it was right around Thanksgiving or whatnot, was that he couldn't even do a push-up. Like, that's how bad his shoulders couldn't even do a push-up. So it's like, look, bro, if you can't do a push-up, how are you expecting to move 350-pound linemen? Like he used to just toss them aside. So I'm with you. Yes, he needs to get back to being the bread man, being the game wrecker that we know that he can be, because it also makes life a million times easier for the edge rushers, for everybody else around him. And so it kind of makes you, I've seen these comments out there as well, like, kind of relating to Jalen Phillips. There's some, it's a vocal minority, but it's a vocal one, in saying, like, stop pushing Jalen Phillips because he didn't do anything. He didn't move the needle. He wasn't an impact player. And I'm like, did you realize that the Eagles were top 5 in sacks after Jalen Phillips?
Yeah.
And before Jalen Phillips, we were really struggling to get sacks. Now, was it what we would want? No, because it kind of trickled off towards the end of the year, and it didn't end up showing itself as much in the playoff game. I get that. But Jalen Phillips did make an impact. It was very noteworthy because of the pressures that he got, and even if he didn't get the sacks necessarily, it was helping Jalix Hunt. Jalix Hunt was winning a bunch of pass rush reps.
Yes.
Having somebody else on the other side to push the quarterback his way or contain for him to be able to get the sack. So I'm like, that was a big emphasis. But then just imagine if Jalen Carter was needing to be doubled every time. Because he wasn't last year. Like, he was double teamed, sure, but he wasn't required to be double teamed near as much. And so if he's back to the level that he is, like you're talking about, Moro Ojomo took a huge step, and that was with Jalen Carter not being the guy that we know that he can be. If he is, Jordan Davis took another step too. Like, this has a really good potential to be one of, if not the best defensive lines in football. But it really starts again with Jalen Carter. So I'm right there with you. It's a positive first step. I just hope and pray if it's an alternative route to surgery, okay, fine, like, get 100%. But if they're going along and it's like, you know what, hey, this thing's not really getting to 100%, we may need to get some shoulder procedure, then just go ahead and get it taken care of. Because he did have the, whatever it was, the not the scope, I don't think, or whatever. Close,
it was the minor, whatever it was.
The minor procedure. But if it needs full-blown surgery, like, if that's going to be what's required, get it taken care of while you have time. We don't need the, getting into training camp and Jalen Carter's off to the side today. He can't practice because of a shoulder injury. Then we're talking about something else entirely. So, Devons with 5. What's up? Appreciate that. Says, fellas, what's up? Good to see you. Good to be back too. I know we missed the stream from last week, but shout out to you guys. Who is that? Jay Davis. Oh, you need a drug test immediately for saying that? Who's that? Is that? Oh, I think talking about something else. Trade JC for Max Crosby and a 3rd-round pick. Yeah, trade. What are we doing? Trade.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Max Crosby and a 3rd-round pick. It's wild. Crosby, the Crosby hype has died down, understandably, and probably for a good thing, but. People are saying put Trent on a timeout for that one.
I think the Raiders, in terms of
since this nigga started winning, he hasn't done any cheese.
The combine report is
this nigga wanted to cheese the whole fucking beginning of the game.
I think a team would.
Now the nigga get up. Now he don't want to cheese no more.
They're trying to get the same thing Micah Parsons got, and Micah Parsons is more disruptive than Max Crosby. Not by much, but I think most GMs probably, 9 out of 10 would take in a blind foul. But no draft picks involved. Which would you take? You would take Micah or Max Crosby. So to me, I think they'll eventually get a 1 and then something else, maybe a day 2 draft pick, maybe a 1 and some sort of starter player. 2 firsts for Max Crosby seems a little bit steep, and I don't know if Howie's willing to pay
2
that.
firsts.
Everyone is saying that it'll never happen. Howie was in on Max Crosby. He was in on goodness gracious, Micah Parsons. Goodness, I don't whatever.
Bro, that's Micah Parsons, nigga.
For 2 first-round draft picks, he was in on it. So. And that was when they didn't have
nigga,
space,
that's Micah Parsons, nigga.
So
fuck you talking
never
about?
Never say never. I think he'll call, but 2 firsts is
What the fuck were we gonna pay
He'll
him
explore
though?
everything, as we know that he always seems to do. But yeah, it's like he's what Max Crosby's 29, and I think will he turn 30 in August?
I think he will.
I think I was gonna say I think his birthday was
August 22nd.
Okay, yes, yep. So a 30-year-old versus Micah Parsons, there's a couple years difference
26,
already, and then combined with the disruption, even if it's small, if you want to argue that.
But maybe the Cowboys dodged the bullet though.
Hey, we're trading for X player.
The Cowboys probably dodged the bullet doing that shit.
But that's why the combine is here. That's why all the
I think the Cowboys dodged the bullet.
Trying to see what they could do.
Traded Micah Parsons. If he gets injured again, they dodged the bullet. I ain't gonna lie.
Searching for
if that nigga get injured again, they dodged the bullet.
If you start there, then you allow for some wiggle room in negotiation. Otherwise, if they go in and say, "Oh yeah, we only want a first-round pick," that's it. Well, then they're probably going to get offered a second.
That smell like that pistachio shit.
So it makes sense, but
that smell like that pistachio shit.
It does have.
So
it got pistachio.
It never hurts this time of year, I guess. But by saying that, still, you're gonna people are gonna wonder what you're on.
Frozen vanilla, toasted almonds, and warm sugar.
Yeah, that's why it's that almond.
For those that have
Did I let you smell the
NFLPA
hair perfumes
report
that I got?
cards.
Yes, I was just looking at that.
You just told me why you got it.
Everything like that.
Fascinating.
They're not going to do it publicly now anymore, Thomas, which we saw that. But still, people talk and compile reports and whatnot. So was able to get that. Shout out to ESPN's, I think it's Kaylin Kaler, I believe is how I say the last name there. But she compiled the list for the Eagles. I'm not going to go over every single one, but it was interesting to see the coaches. So you have strength coaches, A-, position coaches, A-.
That hurts.
Offensive
You
coordinator,
keep saying that.
I don't care.
C+.
Okay, so I'm iffy about this
Very
one.
interesting there.
Who was the offensive coordinator this past season, Josh? I forgot.
I can't remember his name. I think he's over in Miami now, but they say he's a really good one. He's a really good coach.
Yeah. By the way,
Yeah.
C plus was
I made
the
you smell that one
lowest you
earlier.
could grade an
sprayed
offensive
that on me
coordinator
and got
out
it in
of
the
all
fucking
32. Like there was A,
fitting
B,
room.
Hair
C was the
perfume.
lowest. And then there was
And
Chip
that's the
Kelly,
one.
who got an F
I
minus
sprayed that on my
for the
hair
Raiders
before I
offensive
put a
coordinator.
different
An
fucking
F minus.
before I
That's how
sprayed
bad it was for the Las Vegas
my
Raiders. But
other
Kubiak is
hair
going to be so loved there.
I
But
was like,
okay, basically saying that besides Chip Kelly,
Yeah.
Kevin Patullo was very
So this
low on
one's
that
for
list.
hair,
I mean,
body.
Kevin Patullo will fucking trash.
This one's
Bitch
for
ass
hair,
nigga.
body, and linen.
On Chip and calling plays.
That nigga
weren't on the
Patullo
playbook.
was a
Did you see
bitch
that
ass
one?
nigga.
Yes.
This one's
It was
literally
like,
for hair perfume.
yeah.
He's like just
Hair
off the
perfume.
top of his head, and
But I
it's
saw
like,
it
yeah,
online, and I was like,
guys
what
are
is that?
what is this play? Like, we've
'Cause
never
I
called
seen a
this.
girl
This is not
use it
even
in the
play
video.
on the
Unbelievable.
So,
She said hair
no,
perfume.
yeah,
I said,
F
hold on,
minus, F
hold on,
minus.
what is
You're
this?
Just cashing the checks and
What
showing
is
up
this?
on a Sunday, going like,
'Cause
yeah,
my
we'll
immediate
figure it out.
thought
We'll call
was
plays that
Sicily.
don't even exist.
For hair perfume?
How the mighty have fallen
Hair
at one point.
was
Be stinky.
And now I'm kind of pissed
He
off
still
because she
landed a job,
didn't fucking
which is
cover her
you know,
bun
impressive in its own
with a
ways.
shower
But
cap.
defensive coordinator
And that's
A
gonna make
plus,
her
of
hair
course we
stink
know that.
faster.
Big fan.
Shocker.
Special
Well, you got
teams
that
A.
shit sprayed on the back of
Michael
her
Clay.
shit.
I'm going to,
didn't
but
retain him at one
damn.
point. There was thought he'd be going somewhere else. I think he interviewed with the Bucks and
The Bucks,
if there was one other one, maybe I'm not sure, but definitely the Bucks. Nick Sirianni got an A.
Got an A for what?
That
Sorry, no,
was
let me
big.
stop playing. Let me stop playing.
That
You
was
got it.
big. Yeah. And that kind of backs up, or at least, I don't know if it backs up, but it does kind of go against the whole idea of what does Nick Sirianni do? And, obviously he doesn't do the offensive coordinator well because Kevin Patullo was a C+, but he does interact well.
Kevin
with the
Patullo
players.
was a C+.
They do say it publicly. When they're asked, even ex-players are like, no, Nick's cool. Like Nick's fun to hang out with him. We hung out with Nick Sirianni. We thought he was cool, right? I mean, it's not a shocker that even though he's kind of dorky and goofy in press conferences, he's not a great public speaker, but one-on-one, he does a very good job. And so I'm not shocked that it's an A, but it does show you that they put the blame, this is from the players, on Kevin Patullo.
Yes, Kevin Patullo was shit. That's why, nigga.
We think back to the Raider week.
That nigga was dookie.
And the offense did technically look better, and we were like, oh, maybe he does do something. So it was interesting. I would have guessed that Sirianni would have gotten a B. The fact he got an A.
A B?
Okay, it tells you something. It
does.
It just tells you that the media pushes a lot of narratives, and I know a lot of us want Nick Sirianni fired. You and I both have called for that in the past. But what happens in the building is very different in terms of perception from the outside. I think A.J. Brown is the exact same way, even though I hate talking about the A.J. Brown trade drama. I haven't seen a comment on it because people don't care, or they're at least tired of it. But I think the perception on Sirianni internally is a lot better than people realize.
Yeah, he just doesn't know X's and O's, which is fine.
Yes,
but
which is fine, but it's also a problem when they're struggling with X's and O's.
Yeah. And
But
hopefully,
credit to him. Sean Mannion's in. He allowed
That's
it.
true.
He seemed to spearhead the hiring, and changes here.
It's going to be something completely different. It was interesting too because the last two grades here.
Bro, I can't wait for these niggas to be gone. I can't wait for these niggas to be gone, bro.
Howie Roseman to us and to the collective media out there, to probably every other team. I mean, John Spytek, the Raiders GM, was basically saying like, "Yeah, I'm scared to." I'm paraphrasing, but basically scared to take calls from Howie because I wonder what he's trying to fleece me with. So, but that's kind of the general consensus. But players voting this it's just interesting. I mean, it's not bad. It's a B, but I just wonder if that's almost more so a grade of like. They don't interact as much with because like okay, the deals get done. All right, interact with Howie, fine, that's it, move on. Same thing with Lurie. It's not as much of like how good is he at his job versus players